Good morning, folks. Flying Scotsman here, and welcome to this video. Well, it's morning here where I am. But anyway, today we're going to be doing some work with the Dell Optiplex 4600. What are we going to be doing with it, you might ask? Well, you might notice it's currently on my desk, in the office, and in bits. And the reason for that is because we're going to add some parts to it. We're going to take some parts away from it and generally just turn it into a server for RetroFest. The reason I'm doing this is because the 4100 is a wee bit slow to get started up in the morning. You know, so I thought it might be better if we had something a wee bit faster. So the 4100's got a Pentium 3, 866 megahertz. ID this. Oh, and it's got 512 megs of RAM. This, by comparison, has got 2 gigs of RAM, Pentium 4, 2.8 gigahertz, with hyper-threading, socket 478, and it has SATA. But to give it the best possible chance, we're going to Jiraga 1 this thing up. Yep, that's right. The RetroFest server used to run on one of these, a 120 gigabyte Seagate ID hard drive. Instead, its boot drive is going to be one of these, a 120 gigabyte solid state drive. So, once the RAF are done flying by, we'll begin. And we're back. Sorry about this, filming is a bit sporadic, I'm in an office. So, what have I done? I have installed the original 120 gig hard drive. It's got data on it, so I've installed that up here where the second optical drive would go. And I have installed the SSD in a bracket down here. Now, we still obviously need to connect that SSD up. So, in order to do that, I have got something quite nifty. Now, what this is, I've had these before, is you have this on one end that goes into your SSD, and then you've got a Molex connector and an SSD plug on the other. This is precisely for computers that are precisely like this one, actually, that have SATA parts on the motherboard, but not necessarily SATA power connectors. So what I need to do is, I need to I do apologise for the noise, someone's doing some kind of work. Of course, there we go. So that is now connected. If I bring my camera around, you can see. So this needs to go, this connector needs to go on the main board. So up here, I would say. Now this is SATA 1, so the SSD will not run at full speed. It's, I mean, how much of a speed difference we're going to get, I don't know. But I would like to see if there are any AHCI drivers for Windows 2000. If there are, it could be hell of a useful. Right, so there we go. Now, what I want to do now is I will reinstall the front of this case. There we go. Keeping the floppy drive in there. Useful to have, especially on a 2000 box. And So hopefully what I need to do now, just very quickly, I'll I'm gonna pop this. Whoa! That thing's falling out. Where the hell did that come out? I've never, I don't think I've ever, if very, very rarely, removed that. That's, yeah. Anyway, enough of that. I'm just gonna pop my toolkit on there, and next thing we want to do is we want to plug this in and just see, give it the old smoke test, see how well it works. Quite interesting that the SSD had this sticker removed before installing. I think this is the oldest system I've actually put an actual SSD in. Windows 2000 doesn't have trim support, so yeah, I do wonder how this is going to go. I will obviously have a look at you know, if there's anything I need to be aware of. Windows 2000 on an SSD, just as long as it doesn't go trying to defrag the drive in. And that is a bit to that compact LTE. I will be working on that. I have some bits. I've glued some of the docking station back together. Isn't Loctite amazing? Anyway. I think this is actually braided cable. So very kind of fancy Greta Thunberg spec cable, obviously, because it's braid. So we'll make it really, really modern. We plug this in using DVI. So why not? DVI, USB, optical out. No, I'm kidding on. And then got a kettle plug. And then of course, because this is a Dell, it will try and start itself up. All right, folks, smoke test. That works. There we go. Drive configuration, SATA. Yeah, we have all of them. Yep, so we've got 2 gigs of RAM. AGP aperture of 128 megs, I'm not sure. That could be a 256 meg card. Who knows? FX 5200. Right, okay. Save changes and exit. Right. This will probably work. Or maybe not. Oh well. What I will do is just go back to drive configuration and, oh, say an unknown device and drive C. Okay. All right. That wasn't supposed to happen. Right. Please excuse my cable management. I remember when SATA first came out, and one of the things they were saying was about how much tidier the cases are going to be. There we go. So we're in. We're actually in. That works. So what I need to do now is I need to get a Dell Dimension 4600 resource CD. And oh dear, it seems to have, it doesn't seem to be very happy with me. Can't get into the recovery console. And I can't get into the Windows 2000 server itself, so this is going to mean a reinstall. Well, the weather's certainly clouded over a bit today. It's a bit more in the humid kind of region, I would say. Probably likely to be, well, I would say it's likely to be stormy, except it's Scotland. We don't really get that many storms in Scotland. But it did say it was going to be raining this week. Anyway, see if we can actually see the SATA drive. Can't remember if I've put it into AHCI or IDE mode. I guess we're a way to find out. Well, I would say it's in IDE mode, so we can go ahead and get that installed. And it looks like, yeah, it kind of looks like the drive is, it wasn't actually partitioned in two. So let's get that sorted. Okay, this is going to do a full format of an SSD. Right. As you can see though, it's going a lot quicker than it would do on a 120 gig mechanical drive. So, while that's the way doing that, there are things I need to download and get burned onto CD and get sorted. So I'm going to go do that. And you guys can all go pause the video, make a cup of tea, and then we'll all meet back here in, say, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes? I don't know. Alright, now it's the first boot of Windows 2000 server off of an SSD. Bear in mind, this is an initial boot up as we go into the install prompt thing. The GUI phase of setup. Please excuse me. I seem to have become an Egypt. Now this does mean that I have effectively changed the topology of the RetroFest network, certainly in terms of software, and every machine is going to need to be reconfigured. Otherwise it'll be, I mean, I'm planning to use similar domain names and what have you, but yeah. So I think once again I will cut here and just come back to you once something exciting happened. I know I'm probably going to get a screen full of comments of, oh, you didn't install with the thing with the HCI and the trim. Yeah, I know. This is the first time I've ever installed anything below Windows 10, I think, on an SSD. Yeah, that's quite depressing in a way. No, I do tell a lie. Windows 7. Yeah, I did install Windows 7 on an SSD. Wonder if I can get any trim software for Windows 2000 or even convert it to HCI. Anyway, enough of that. Let's, well, we can actually Windows 2000 actually allows you to select what you'd like to install at the time of installing the server, probably because there's certain things that need installed at install time. Can have remote administration mode, allows a limited number of administrators to remotely manage this server. The setting minimizes impact on server performance. Or application server mode allows users to remotely run one or more applications. This setting optimizes program response times. To use this option, you must set up a terminal services licensing server in this domain or work group within 90 days. Right, okay, now we just want a remote administrator mode. It's RetroFest. We're gaming. Nobody really needs access to anything running Windows 2000 server. Okay, guys, it's I think it's a week later, and had a couple of issues. And I've also accidentally deleted everything off of the other hard drive, so that's a bit of a stupid thing to do. So I am going to have to repopulate this server with apps and such likes. But I've not been able to actually set up the domain controller, so I have just decided to go ahead and give it a fresh format. And we will do it. I mean, it's not like I'm going to have to change the computers or anything. I think it should still work, despite it being on an SSD. A couple of issues I do have. Oh yeah, by the way, I've turned off one of the hard drives while I do the format. Stop it happening again, or Windows 2000 being installed on the spinning drive. A couple of issues I do have, obviously, is the lack of any trim support in Windows 2000. But I'd like to think that even though this is a WD green drive, there's probably some inherent garbage collection on the drive itself, so hopefully that will be a thing. I will see. It's not necessarily something that people do, is to install such old operating systems on SSDs, but I mean it's something that I will probably find myself doing more as mechanical drives start to go out of favour. So now what we are going to do is install everything on the resource CD. Now, I have found that you can use XP drivers. I've also found that this thing does not like to shut up about event services not starting up. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, well, I'll just close out of that if I can. Now, this is not going as well as I was hoping. Oh, mercy me. There we go. And some people might think, on a system like this, should I not use Windows Server 2003? Well, if I'm honest, no. There's a good reason for that. I don't want to use Windows Server 2003 because I want to be able to talk to Windows 95 and potentially 3.1 boxes as well. But I mean, it's going to be a while before RetroFest is actually a go. Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think we're going to have to, you know, deal with. At the time of recording, it is June the 5th, I do believe. Let's just check that. Yep, 5th of June 2020. Now, one of the now I do game with Scottish Retro tournaments, and they do host some of their tournaments here, as you've probably seen in previous videos. But unfortunately, they were thinking that, you know, we could be gaming by June or July, you know, we could be back in the swing of things, but I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think we're going to be actually hold up for quite a while. So there is a RetroFest online service coming, stay and play. And also, one might start to wonder, is there in fact a second wave coming of COVID? Pretty much, some people will say it's pretty much guaranteed. Other people will say, don't talk absolute bobbins. Who knows? All I know is, if we're not sensible, and if we don't take the softly, softly, catchy monkey approach, then yes, it's my personal opinion that we could be looking down the barrel of another wave of COVID. I mean, it happened with the Spanish influenza pandemic. You know, the second wave there was 3 waves. The second wave was the worst. And, you know, again, if we're not careful, we're going to be back in lockdown with more people ill. This is something that I take issue with. I know I'm installing Windows 2000 server. But I mean, this is something I do take issue with, is that we tend not to learn from history. And when I was at school, I do admit, you know, I did think history was probably a bit of a dead loss, even though there was a lot of it that I did find interesting. But my humanities teacher could hear me now and thinking, actually, maybe history should be mandatory to take it up to standard grade. I think you should have to do at least standard grade history. And the reason I think that should be possibly a thing is because I think there's a lot of patterns I've noticed, you know, repeating themselves in history. And I think the more people that are able to see these patterns, more people are able to jump on their representatives in government, in parliament, in Congress, wherever you live, and say, I remember something happening like this before, and I think we should just, gonna do that. So we have sound. Now, I know it's a bit, well, depending on how you look at things, why does a server need an FX 5200 graphics card? Some people will say, well, it's a pixel pusher, so that's perfectly fine for a headless computer, because how terrible is the FX 5200? Well, I have an 8300 in my server at home because it needed an graphics card. And that's, and PCIe, it needed a PCIe graphics card to work, and that's what I had lying about the place. So in it went, if I'm going to be honest. But a 5200, I mean, it's a card that'll push pixels, it works, it's in there. I don't need to go scrambling for another graphics card. So this machine, I'm installing it kind of in situ. It's on the network, because I was having real trouble getting it to create the domain before when there was nothing plugged into its internet hole. Now, something I do like about this is this system has USB 2, and there is a USB 2 supplemental patch, and it does work on Windows 2000. In fact, it said there, specifically, completing the Windows 2000 KB8 setup wizard. And now for the final driver, and this is probably not the correct driver for the card, but I mean, it'll probably fail. Or maybe not. Last time I installed it, it was still defaulting to 16 colors, so I was able to get it to manually install. I will probably look for a more appropriate driver if it needs it, which I kind of highly doubt. And once the server is properly in situ, it'll be headless, and if I need to do any admin on it, it'll be through the Citrix client, or the Terminal Services client rather. And having USB 2 will certainly help things along. So let's set the driver up. Of course, you don't do it that way in Windows 2000 if there's no display driver installed. You do it that way. There we go. And there you go. Lovely colours. Okay, so now it's time to set up the server. So I want to say this is the only server on my network. I'm starting to think if this SSD was a good idea. Anyway, so to set up Active Directory, you need to set the server as a domain controller. Windows needs to follow information. What do you want to name your domain? I want to name it RetroFest. Yeah, we'll call it local. So the computer has been doing some computing. It's made its own domain controller, retrofest.local, and the computer is named Balgownie, just like it was last time. So now I've gone down to Active Directory, can manage the I can manage the server, users and what have you. So I shall. So I'm going to make a couple of new users. I'm going to make myself a user account. And then a password. There we go. And then a RetroFest user. Okay, so I think what I'm going to need to do now is set up some shares. So I think this should work. Now, obviously there's stuff I still need to do, but what I would like to do is maybe test my work. So I shall. By using one of the other machines. This could make for some entertainment, because I'm effectively joining this machine onto a new domain that's got the same kind of credentials, as it were, as the old one. So it literally is meet your new boss, same as the old boss. Obviously, I'm going to need to empty the password list files on all of these machines. But there you have it. And hopefully I'll be able to log in. Straight away. So, there we have it. So what I think I will do is I will log out of the server. I'll shut it down. Yes, I know I'm a way to freak up my network even more than it is already. And what I will do just now is I'll see if there's any .pol files. I can copy back over to the server. But for the meantime, I've just deleted all the .pwl files as far as I can. Yep, I have. So there's the server in situ. Hopefully this will actually work. Right, so now we're back at this machine. There we go. And there we are. There we are. The server is indeed up and running. I can write myself a batch file. What other folders do I have? And then for RetroFest, now let's see what happens. Absolutely nothing at all. And there we go. I have a network login script. I just needed to point the network login script to the file itself rather than this whole but there we go. So we have a basic network infrastructure up and running. And just to check I can actually write to these files. Yep. Can I retrieve it? Yes, I can. And it's a good idea to do this on all the files if you can. But there you have it. RetroFest server is now set up. Might have been a bit tidier if I'd have done some things other ways, but hey ho, we're pretty much back up and running. So, with that said, what I do need to do is repopulate the server's hard drive, and I can do that in my own time. But for now, what I will do is I will end this video, and I would like to thank you all for watching. GD bye.